Can't hear me. That's very, very important on today's show. Okay, we should be good now. All right, how is that? Hopefully you can hear me now. I should have that lip reading class. All right. I don't want you to have a lip reading class. I want you to actually hear me and everything that's being heard today. Things being said today. Hold on one second here. Let me see. Somebody says, there you go. Okay. Good. We good now? Great. So let me start from the beginning and say everything again. Just to make sure. Okay, we good? Thumbs up? Great. So on today's show, we're going to be speaking with Charmaine Mcguffey today. We good? Great. Charmaine Mcguffey's coming in at 8:30 a.m. She's running for Hamilton County Sheriff in November. We'll talk about numerous things. I've got a lot of questions for her. If you have questions, C. Smith, Jasmine, Glenn, thank you. Great. We all gravy. Great. I have a lot of questions for her. If you have questions, we spoke with her, maybe it was almost a year ago to this month, maybe. Right when she decided to run for Hamilton County Sheriff. So we'll catch up with her. A lot has happened in a year. A lot of ground to cover. And thank you, Victoria. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And then at 9:30 a.m., we'll catch up with Dave Zirin, who's the sports editor at The Nation and author. Thank you so much. He's also the editor over at edgeofsports.com. You can check it out. And then we'll talk about the collision of sports and politics in the new America, right? Post George Floyd. There's a lot of things. I want to talk about Colin Kaepernick, because some people are like, yeah, Colin's going to get a job back, which I'm like, so what? He gets a job back? The NBA and beyond. Dave has a lot of contacts, a lot of insight. Should be a good conversation. It's been a minute as well. Good morning to you. All right. Along the way, I want to know what you think about the idea of Ohio reissuing the stay-at-home mandate. Remember, that's how we started with this whole COVID-19 thing. Everybody was at home. And maybe that's the way we should return if we're really serious about trying to, beat COVID-19. Rather than trying to do it county by county. So just yesterday, Mike DeWine announced that the state will require masks in 7 counties where COVID-19 is spreading. These counties include Hamilton County, Butler County, Montgomery County, Cuyahoga County, Huron County, Franklin County, and Trumbull County. Do you live in any of those 7 counties? I do. I live in Hamilton County. Okay. Shout out to the Cincinnati Inquirer. This is from their website. You can see it right there. Give me 1 second here. You can see it right there. That is by red, the counties in which COVID-19 cases are going up. And I think part of the reason why COVID-19 cases are going up is because I believe that Mike DeWine, in all of his infinite wisdom and following the lead of the Trump administration, pushed us back out into harm's way a little too early. And I understand the plight of businesses. I'm very sympathetic. But if we don't get a handle on this, then businesses are going to be affected even more. Even more. And how is this going to work exactly? I mean, people are driving in and out of these counties. They may work in Hamilton County, but they may work in a certain county and live somewhere else. So they mask up when they go in and take the mask off when they go out. How effective is that really going to be? Speaking of effective, this goes in effect today at 6 p.m. And I want to get your thoughts about it. What do you think about Governor Mike DeWine's order to wear a mask in public in the so-called red counties? Again, Hamilton County at the top of the list, where I'm broadcasting from right now. What do you think about Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones? He says he's against the order and will not do anything to enforce it. So in Butler County, even though the governor has said that they want to put this in place, the white male sheriff, Richard Jones, has said that he's against it and will not enforce it. So now, what does that do to the whole plan exactly? If Butler County is one of the counties that's spiking, and yet law enforcement, the sheriff there, is saying he's not going to enforce it, which sends the message that, hey, do what you want to do. How are we going to get ahead of this? Like I told you, folks, we are getting a glimpse into what will happen, what could happen when the real apocalypse comes. right? When the real end of days come, when there's a threat that's a global threat, 30 to 40% of the population will be acting like Richard Jones. 30 to 40% of the population that will be arguing with the other 70 to 40 to 60% of the population about what we should do, even though what we should do is clear. We are our own worst enemy as human beings, is what I'm trying to say. It's like the damn Walking Dead. Anybody watch that series, The Walking Dead? If you watch that series, what's so interesting about it is that the real monsters are not the zombies. The real monsters are the humans when they're in a pressure situation. You ever seen that before? The real monsters are the humans. The real threat are the humans, not COVID-19. It's the humans. I mean, we may or may not survive, we may or may not survive COVID-19, but we certainly are not going to survive the impact of human beings. Certainly. You ever watch that show, Walking Dead? I was into it for a while. It was dope. And then it just the zombies and the moaning just got gratuitous. It seemed like I could predict when they were going to have a zombie scene. I had to disengage. I'm sorry. But it's the truth. Anybody watch that series, you'll know the real monsters are not the zombies. Just like in real life. Just like in real life. Good morning to you. It's a damn shame. Good morning. Thank you so much for letting me know about the sound this morning. I appreciate that. Good to see everybody. Hey, Casey. Yeah, good to see you. Hey, Daniel. Good to see you as well. Good morning to you. Anthony writes morning all. Hey, what's up, Aaron? Hey, what's up? What's up? Hey, Daryl. Good to see you, brother. Thank you so much for telling me about the sound. I really appreciate it. I don't want to be looking crazy out here. Appreciate it. Yep. I got it. Yep. There we go. Somebody say, hey, he's good now. Great. Yes, I'm good now. I can see it. Thank you so much. Good to see everybody. Alicia writes, good morning, Nathan and the Choppers. Okay.
Oh, get to the chopper!
You know what happens. All right, coming up in just about 8 minutes, I'm scheduled to speak with Charmaine Mcguffey. She's running for Hamilton County Sheriff. We here on the show got to speak with her about a year ago. It was almost a year to this month. It was right after she had announced. And now in the post-George Floyd, post-Breonna Taylor, post so much activism and social movement that's hit the streets, it'd be interesting to think, well, among the questions I want to ask her is, how all of this has shaped and or informed her. All right. Has it moved her in any way? And if so, how? What does that mean in terms of how she will be a Hamilton County sheriff? What about the conditions at the jail? What is she willing to do? How much is she aware of it? What about diversity in terms of Hamilton County sheriffs, which is very, very lacking? How committed is she to racial diversity across the board? How much flexibility does the Hamilton County sheriff really have in terms of remaking the staff? Again, those are just some of the questions that are on the tip of my mind. I want to get your thoughts about it, though. 513-873-7134. And, of course, I will ask her about Bruce Hoffbauer, who, for whatever reason, he doesn't feel comfortable. I guess we just don't have an environment in which he will feel emotionally secure, emotionally safe to come on and talk about what happened back in 1990 when he killed an unarmed man. And the city manager, among other folks, said that it didn't have to go down like that. You got two armed police officers dealing with an unarmed man, and the unarmed man ends up dead. By today's standards, we already know that sounds not good. I mean, it's up in the air as to what will happen because, look at what happened with Tensing and Sam DuBose. Ray Tensing should be in jail right now. He should be rotting in a prison right now. But because of racism, because of systematic racism, the way that we get our juries, because of the ineffective leadership from the Hamilton County prosecutor. Again, I don't know why the media doesn't keep hammering this home. Hamilton County prosecutor Joe Dieters did an absolutely horrible job at trying to get justice for the Sam DuBose family. He did a horrible job. Put a witness on the stand. His crew did a horrible job. How do you put a witness on a stand in a trial of that nature? I know I keep saying it over and over again. And the witness gives testimony against what you're trying to do, and you're the prosecution. Like I said, they're locking up people every day for less. People in some cases didn't do a damn thing, but they're plea bargaining because they know how the system works. They do that every single day. You got a man that murdered somebody on video and lied about it. Everybody can see it. We can't get justice. But I think what it comes down to is the community needs to stand up, exercising that vote and push for real reforms. Think about it. Think about this. We keep talking about Ray Tensing, but how many real reforms came out of and were put in place after Ray Tensing? Zero that I know of. Somebody help me. Zero. So what are the politicians doing? Talking, doing this, and we just accept it. Will this happen in the post-George Floyd world where now everybody is active? We'll have to, I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know, family. I mean, we'll traverse these waters together. We'll find out. How many people, ask her, will she sign off ATF paperwork for things like short-barreled shotguns? Okay. All right. Well, Anthony, make sure you stick around and re-ask that question when she comes on, because I'll definitely put the questions out there, most certainly. Hey, Mary Carol, good morning to you. Hey, good to see you. Vince Rice, good morning, Choppers. Hey, good morning to you.
Go! Get to the chopper!
It's what we do. Every show has a ritual. It's what we do. I agree. Amanda writes, I agree, too early. Too early for what? Too early for what exactly, Amanda? Because you reiterated, I might have missed it. Anthony writes, yep. Following Orange 45 will take you over a cliff. Oh, okay. She's saying she's agreed that we left everybody knows in Ohio that we should have the stay-at-home protection order should have been in place longer. If the stay-at-home protection order had been in place longer, then you wouldn't be seeing these skyrocketing numbers of COVID-19. Period. No, I don't think anybody can argue against that. It's not about protesters. It's about leadership not having the courage to lead. Mike DeWine, he showed us. He's like a human windsock. Whichever way the wind is going, that's the way he goes. Left, right, back, forward. Oh, they're going to the right. Oh, they're going to the left. That's the way he goes. That's not real leadership. It might be difficult to tell businesses, hey, listen, we got to do this for the public good. But they keep saying things like, well, we're going to have to learn to live with this, meaning that money talks, cream, cash rules everything around me, not your public safety. Okay? And as a black man living in Ohio, part of me feels as if when we keep hearing these news reports about how non-white people are being hit by it hurt, part of me feels like that's a part of the conversation, a part of the decision to reopen and keep everything open for the state. My question for you is simple. Should Ohio reissue a stay-at-home order? This conversation is being had all over the nation. You go Google it. They're having these conversations right now where smart, intelligent people just like us are asking the same question about their respective state. What should we do? What's the right thing to do? All right, think about it. 513-873-7134. I'm going to jump inside the chop shop real quick and say what's up to the choppers. Hold on 1 second here. Say what's up to the choppers. Before we get started with our interviews this morning, again, coming up at the bottom of the hour, I'm scheduled to speak with Charmaine Mcguffey, and she's running for Hamilton County Sheriff. And then an hour later at 9:30 a.m., I'm scheduled to speak with Dave Zirin. He's the sports editor over at The Nation, also the editor of the Edge of Sports podcast, edgeofsports.com. You can check it out if you're into that kind of stuff. And he talks about the collision of sports and politics. Mason Mahler writes, morning, Nate and the Choppers. Hashtag spay and neuter all wolves. It's an inside joke. Hashtag Taliban bounty for Chris Matthews accuser. What? No. Donald is the runt of the family. Hashtag free Bubba Wallace garage door noose. And what is your president doing? What is your president doing? Why is your president making excuses for the Confederate flag? I thought we had this conversation already. I thought we settled this. I've got Charmaine Mcguffey on the line right now. Hey, Charmaine, please stay on the line. I've got to greet the choppers real quick. I'll come straight to you. Miss D. Rice, greetings. Ray Rice, grand risings all. Cincy Tigers writes, good morning. Dr. Acton's miscalculations is in the house this morning. Good morning, Choppers. I might call just to wake y'all. Disgusted. Funny how Deshaun Jackson is getting treated like he's the black lion with all the hyperbolic reaction. Hashtag alt middle. Brian writes, morning. Kelly writes, good morning. Dr. Acton's miscalculations writes, Dave Zirin is the sports writer version of Sean King. Oh, really? Oh, thank you about the sound. I appreciate it. Ray writes, Nathan, ask her, has Bruce for sheriff committed to a debate yet? Okay. Well, I'll ask her just that. I've got Charmaine Mcguffey on the line. Hey, Charmaine, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Nathan. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we're living in quite interesting times. I mean, the first time we spoke was almost a year to this month when you had first announced. And so much has happened in a year. So I definitely want to get you back on and get your thoughts about what's happening, how that may shape you as the possible next Hamilton County Sheriff, and just catch up on, the politics and things like that. So thank you for your time this morning.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I appreciate it.
So let's just jump straight into it. I mean, as I said, a lot has happened within the last year. I want to get your thoughts about the public protests that have happened across the nation and the city of Cincinnati as well, and how that has impacted you as a candidate, running for public office in these times.
Well, and it's a great question because it has impacted me as it has impacted many, many others. To watch all of these hundreds of thousands of people take to the streets and, demand that their voices be heard and, conduct these peaceful protests and, really question, are we getting true transparency from law enforcement? I think what it does for me is it heartens me. It makes me feel like this is exactly the road we need to go down because people want to know and people want transparency. They want accountability. It's what I've stood on. It's what I've talked about my entire career, really.
Speaking with Charmaine Mcguffey. Now, to the audience, if you have any questions that you would like for me to ask Charmaine Mcguffey, please send them my way, and I will try to mix them in. So, again, we spoke a year ago, but just tell people about who you are and a little bit about your background.
Okay, thank you. So I spent 33 years with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, and in those years, I rose in rank. I was a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, and then the major of jail and court services. And in that rank, I was the highest ranking woman in the history of the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. And I also commanded a group of 100 support staff and almost 500 uniformed officers, and I was also in charge of care and custody of 1,400 prisoners. And, I held that role for 5 years. My tenure ended with the Sheriff's Department when Jim Neal fired me, and quite frankly, he fired me because I demanded accountability in use of force situations, particularly inside that jail, which was my preview. I was the commander of the jail. I had every right to question the actions of and the practice, quite frankly, of not holding officers accountable for excessive use of force. And so Jim Neal fired me with the allegation he had internal affairs, who I had a very strong disagreement with. He had them create a report that said I was hostile. And, I filed a federal lawsuit to get my due process regarding that report, to bring the facts to light, the true facts, and not the gossip and innuendo that's throughout that report. And then I decided after a year or so of being fired that I was going to run for sheriff because I decided, you know what, I can do a better job than him. I certainly can, and I have good ideas, and I believe I have people backing me that want this change and want transparency in law enforcement.
So I said, yeah, there's been a lot of, as you said, rumors, a lot of conversation about that. So I want you to speak about that. I mean, I've heard things about you being on the Brady list, some type of altercation that took place that led to that. Can you speak to that? And then also, where exactly did your relationship with Jim Neal break down?
Okay, so I'll first speak to the Brady list. I was put on the Brady list by the sheriff to retaliate against me. So the origin of that incident was 10 years ago in Covington, Kentucky. I was targeted because I am gay. I was targeted leaving a gay bar. The officers were clearly targeting us. The only thing we were doing is walking in a crosswalk, mind you, to our vehicle. We were told that we were under arrest. We were screamed at. We were pointed at by officers, by the way, who were 30 feet away from us. And when I called it out, because I saw it immediately what it was, I called it out and I said, you guys are targeting a gay bar and that's not right. And I said, you should find something better to do with your time than target a gay bar. And for that, I received 3 tickets, right? The officer ran over, threw me on the ground, put his knee on my neck, and wrote me, in the end, 3 tickets. 3 tickets for one, menacing, I believe the other, disorderly conduct, and public intoxication. Those charges and tickets were without merit, and they were summarily dismissed weeks later when I got an attorney. And, I reported it to my department immediately, as is policy. And because, I worked, quite frankly, for a sheriff then, Simon Lease, who was very homophobic. He was so angry that I was coming out of a gay bar that he disciplined me for conduct unbecoming. And that is the only discipline that sits in my file today from my 33-year career. Jim Neal waited 10 years before he took action to place me on the Brady list for that discipline of conduct unbecoming. And, it's actually because of the window of time that's been placed on it by legislator, it's no longer even on there. It's not even relevant. And then, of course, they said that I lied about, their internal investigation, which, I refute that 100%. And that's why I have a lawsuit. So that's the Brady list situation.
Yeah, I know your opponent has brought up many times saying that, it shows that you have a lack of transparency and you're not being forthcoming. That's why I want you to speak to it with the audience here so people have an understanding, at least from your side of things, what went down. And I appreciate that. But when you said that you also had some issues in terms of the use of force policy that was being used inside of the Justice Center. Is that correct? Can you speak about more what you saw, what the issues were? And then if you become Hamilton County Sheriff, what will you do to address it?
Okay, thank you. Yes. So what I saw beginning to happen under the tenure of Jim Neal, was that officers were not being held accountable for being excessive in their use of force. I mean, obviously there are things that happen inside a jail when we do legitimately have to put our hands on people. But, I came up in an era of working inside that jail where we don't condone punching people, okay? We don't condone just for our own gratitude, we just get a few extra punches in because we're angry or, something didn't go our way that day. I mean, that absolutely should not have stood. And when I brought that to administration's attention, I was told to be quiet. I was told to stand down. And then on top of that, there were instances of serious use of force. I mean, I'm talking about prisoners who were hospitalized, okay? I'm not talking about a black eye. And, when I brought those instances to the table and demanded accountability, demanded transparency from internal affairs, is when things really heated up. And that's when, it's exactly why I want to point out to everyone, there are so many really, really good cops out there and good people in uniform, but this is exactly why they don't speak up. Because when you speak up and you speak out and you point it out, get ready because they're coming after you. And everybody in uniform knows that. You don't break ranks, but I did. And I think there's a lot of officers out there that want to be empowered to do that. So my relationship with Jim Neal began to break down when all of these claims that I was hostile and so forth, which came completely from the top, came to his attention.
Speaking with Charmaine Mcguffey, she's running for Hamilton County Sheriff. Again, if you have any questions, please send a text and I'll try to mix them in. Okay, so talk to me about the power and the realistic power for change that one person, albeit the Hamilton County Sheriff, has. So you just spoke about the use of force policy. To me, that sounds like, putting, it seems like it should be a multi-pronged approach to it. So like on one hand, it should be making sure that officers are adequately and properly disciplined when they do it. On the other hand, it means setting up new policies and procedures inside that the officer should have to adhere to. But also, I think it means perhaps the process in which you become a Hamilton County Sheriff should be looked upon as well. You agree with that? And if so, what are your ideas to change it?
So I do. I agree with all of that, Nathan. It is multi-pronged, and we have to approach it from all the various aspects of the criminal justice system, which, by the way, is how the sheriff's department touches the criminal justice system. The sheriff's department has the jail, the security of the courthouse, and law enforcement. And in that regard, as the highest elected law enforcement officer, the sheriff has a great deal of influence in how things are going to change, and the actions that we're going to take to make sure that people are treated fairly and justly throughout the system. You want to know what I'm going to change? I'm going to bring in a citizens review board. I don't have to. Nobody's put a mandate on it, but I'm going to do it before it's forced. I'm going to do it before there's a mandate because I am about transparency. I think that's a key factor to healing some of these wounds that we've created between law enforcement and the general public. I'm going to bring in a human resource department, and in that way, we are going to vet very good officers. We're going to hire officers that want to work there for the right reasons, and that's very key. But also, it isn't just the hiring, because that's a huge piece, but it's how you bring your officers along. It's how they grow in your organization. It's what you compliment them for and what you discipline them for, right? That sets them on that direction, because, quite frankly, some of these officers that are in these horrific situations where they're acting badly are seasoned officers. They're not brand new recruits. They're not just out of the academy. These are men and women who have been, they've been in the police department for 10 plus years. So we need to address it, just as you said, that multi-pronged approach, and we need to start bringing in some of the de-escalation practices that we know are best practices.
Sorry about that. Had my microphone off, Charmaine. I'm still here. I have a question from the audience. This is from Zaria. She wants to know, is there a distinction with those detained pretrial versus those serving sentences? Question mark. Is there a presumption of innocence viewed within the jail for those not convicted? Question mark.
That's a great question, and no, there is really no difference. The only difference is in their classification. We do not house someone who is not convicted of a crime with particular other inmates. Other prisoners. There are classification sections for women, men, etc. And if you are pretrial, you are going to be inside our facility. You're going to eat the same food. You're going to live in the same environment. You're going to be treated just as all the other prisoners are treated, who, quite frankly, may be convicted and so forth. So while you await your process, your due process, yes, you'll be incarcerated, and you are treated exactly as any other prisoner inside our jail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't like that. Does that seem fair to you? That's the way the system is, Charmaine, but is that fair? Here you are, you could have a minor offense and you're down here, intermingling with people that may have been convicted on their way to other facilities, perhaps people that may have did some really, really harsh crimes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we can change that system for the betterment of people in general. First of all, most of us can afford a $100 bail, right? Or we can afford a $50 bail. Well, there's a lot of people out there that can't too, right? And if they're brought in on a minor crime that is not a crime against person, that person should be allowed to get processed through their due process, right? And then they should be allowed to go home and attend to their business, which is their job, their children, their families. There's so many of us that can do that. We should afford that right to everyone, because I tell you, study after study shows it. The moment you come into jail, you are going to be pushed further into poverty if that's your situation. And you can, quite frankly, sit in jail for 2 weeks to wait for your case to get to a judge. I mean, things are backlogged. It's a very unfair system.
Currently, how many Hamilton County Sheriff deputies are there?
So we are an 850 strong department. I would say, and I'm just ballparking it here, I'd say probably 700 of those are actual uniformed officers that are working in the jail, court system, and law enforcement. And the rest of that, those numbers make up a support staff. We have a very extensive support staff in our department.
And can you speak about across the board, what are the responsibilities of the Hamilton County Sheriffs? I mean, we understand that the justice system, the courts, but what else?
Well, and that's just it. The sheriff is in charge of the jail for that particular county, and that's the way it is throughout almost all of Ohio, right? And the sheriff dictates how that jail is going to be run, where the money is going to be spent for that jail and that incarceration piece. As well, the court services people don't just provide security for the court, but they also provide security for the common pleas court judges, and they also do a number of other things. They serve warrants, they work with probate court, they're out and about, they do a lot of things, they patrol the county campus, and then law enforcement. The sheriff's office has grown in law enforcement because we have taken the responsibility for different municipalities that have not been able to afford their own police department. So they are contracting with us. And one of those is Lincoln Heights. The other one is Pleasant Ridge, right? And we have departments in our law enforcement is in Anderson Township. So we are out there as law enforcement because the communities are financing that for us to be there.
Do you currently live in Hamilton County? Is that a requirement to be the Hamilton County Sheriff?
Oh, yes, it is. And I do live in Hamilton County, and I've lived in Hamilton County my entire life. I mean, I grew up in this city. I grew up in Price Hill. I had a single mom, 2 sisters, and, she worked so very hard just to provide us with the basics. And I learned early on that, when you want something in life, you have to reach out, and people have to help you get that. The community helped raise me, quite frankly, and I'm proud to say it. Cincinnati Recreation, the teachers in my schools. I mean, people encouraged me and helped me along because they recognized that I had a need. And, quite frankly, that's exactly why I'm where I'm at, because I want to give back to the community, and I 100% believe the community can heal and grow from within when we provide opportunities for that.
And is that a requirement for all Hamilton County Sheriff deputies that they must live in Hamilton County?
Oh, yes. Well, no, for the elected. Let me back up there. The elected officials, it used to be a requirement years ago with the city and the county that you had to live in that region, right? But it doesn't anymore. It doesn't apply. We have deputies that live in, Claremont County. We have deputies that live in Butler County, in Indiana. I mean, and I believe the city's the same way.
Yeah.
They can live anywhere.
See, I hate that, Charmaine. I mean, I'm not sure if that's on your list of things to change. I just feel like when you live in that neighborhood, when you live in that county, you're just going to bring a different mentality to it because you're dealing with your neighbors as opposed to driving into work, right? It's just a mentality shift. Not that you had to necessarily grow up in Hamilton County, but, and I feel that way for Cincinnati police officers. I feel that way for superintendent of schools. I feel like when you're invested with a certain locale, you're gonna bring a different attitude to the job, which I think is very, very necessary. I think it's easier to commit, I won't say brutalities or abuse when you're not invested. You drive away back to Butler County, you drive way back to Indiana, you just I'm back home now, and then you come back to work with maybe a war zone type mentality. Is that something that that is within the power of the Hamilton County Sheriff to change? And how do you feel about that idea?
Well, it is within the power of elected officials to change, but not the Hamilton County Sheriff.
Okay.
Certainly there are people that are in other elected positions that can push that initiative, that can change that rule. I mean, that rule changed a very long time ago because, quite frankly, it was pushed by the people inside those departments who didn't want, for whatever reason, to live in that particular region. And, what I will do as sheriff is it. I think that's one of the ways I can impact it, right? I can incentivize in ways and find ways to say, hey guys, let's live in Hamilton County. Let's live here, because I agree with you, Nathan. I think when you know someone, you're much more likely to be polite to them. You're much more likely to try to understand where they stand and why they're in the situation they're in. And I do think that's a big part of living. I live downtown. I love living downtown. I love this city. I love Price Hill. I can go to Price Hill today. I feel perfectly at home. The neighborhood's changed. All the neighbors I had are no longer there, but I feel perfectly at home in that neighborhood.
Speaking with Charmaine Mcguffey, here's a question from Vince from the audience. He wants to know, Sheriff Mcguffey, what will you do to help improve the community relationships between the sheriff department and community at hand? You agree with instituting a sheriff department outreach programs to help lessen the revolving door process?
Yes, I absolutely do. I brought reforms into the jail when I became the major. That was the very first thing I started doing, because I recognized the need for it and the fact that we were in a 1950s system. One of the initiatives I have, and I've made no secret about it, I am going to create what's called a liaison unit. I don't know what we're going to call it exactly yet, but that unit is going to be a group of people who connect personally to the communities, right? So that when you have some issue or something you want to talk about, particularly about the jail or what's going on inside the jail, you can get a real live person on the phone who will advocate for you, who will, talk to you about the real life things that are going on. Because right now, quite frankly, you call, the phone rings off the hook. If somebody answers it, likely your answer is going to be, look on the computer. Well, you know what? That doesn't tell us what we need to know. So, yes, I will be, and there are deputies, by the way, there are officers who are wearing that black and gold that are itching to get out to those kinds of jobs. That's exactly what they want to do. They want to connect with the community, and I think you'll see that they're very good, very personable. I'm going to put the right people in the right spot.
Speaking with Charmaine Mcguffey, there's some comments here, pardon me. There's some comments about the conditions of the jail. And we talked about this a year ago when we spoke. Mm-hmm. It's still an issue. And if you become the Hamilton County Sheriff, that becomes your problem. It's now your issue. You're not responsible for it. Right. How much leeway, how much power does the Hamilton County Sheriff have in changing the conditions of the jail? And specifically, I'm talking about, the types of food that they eat. Now, we talked about this before. Some people might think it's minor. I would hate to see people go into the jail and come out far worse than they already are, right? And maybe the nutritional requirements could be a part of it. Is there any flexibility in changing that? Like, as I understand right now, we're talking about like bologna sandwiches, hard-boiled eggs, and an orange, right? You're eating that for 2 weeks every day, 3 times a day. You're going to come out and be in much more bad health, right? Which affects your mentality, which affects your life. What can be done? Is that on your radar screen? What can be done to maybe add some different nutritional elements for people who in some cases have not been convicted of anything?
Right. It's a priority. It's not just on my radar screen. It's a priority. I go out down here, downtown, I walk around, people know me. People who were formerly incarcerated know me. And I've been listening to them. And, I'll answer your question. As sheriff, I have, and the sheriff does have, a huge amount of leeway as to what the conditions of that jail are. The sheriff controls that. And, we have needed to fix that food situation for a very, very long time. I will address it. I'm going to address it immediately. I'm not just going to address the food. I'm going to address the medical care, because you're exactly right, Nathan. When someone comes into our facility, they shouldn't leave more broken than when they came in. How do you move on with your life that way? That makes sense to no one. Doesn't matter whether you're white or black. Makes sense to no one. We have to give people the opportunity to improve their lives, and that's a part of it. Food it's a super important piece of incarceration. That's how I feel.
Here's a question from Ashula. She wants to know, what are your thoughts on Butler County Sheriff's decision to not enforce the mask mandate handed down by the governor?
Well, On one hand, I understand the mask mandates, as far as enforcement goes, that we don't want to criminalize yet another behavior that people may or may not have. And I do think that the health department should play a large role in how people are wearing masks and that they should wear masks. As a law enforcement officer, I don't think you get to make that call. As sheriff, I am bound to enforce laws and rules that are handed down to me by other elected officials, legislatures, and so forth. And that's exactly what I'll do, for the public good. My opinion is not, the paramount importance here as the sheriff. As the sheriff, I'm bound to enforce the rules and laws that the elected officials tell me to. And that's, for the betterment of society.
Speaking with Charmaine Mcguffey, she's running for Hamilton County Sheriff in November. Jordan, Chocolate Girl Wonder wants to know, what are your thoughts on the deputy that kicked the dude in the head? And do you feel that the deputies that did nothing should be reprimanded?
Well, my thoughts on the situation involving that deputy is this, and I'm going to say this: that situation came to light in a very short period of time, kind of record time, really, for the community to see it, for something to be done about it. And I'm going to say this in capital letters: finally, right? Finally, Jim Neal was forced to address a situation that was wrong. Jim Neal now, because of all of the voices, because of people being interested in demanding accountability, he had to bring that to the table. I will say this: I'm a perfect example, and I try to remind people of what happens to you when you bring these things to light. And it's my information, and it's very, loosely done here. But my information is there was a deputy that brought that to light, okay, that went around. But, you can't do that publicly, because when you do, just like what happened to me, officers know that you are going to be ostracized in the department, that your future is now going to be uncertain. So, what I think is every officer there needs to be interviewed. Every officer needs to be accountable for whatever their situation was in that process. But most certainly, I complained about a use of force that was far worse injurious to a prisoner than what we saw on that videotape. And that situation, I'll remind you, was not handled at all. Wasn't even taken to the grand jury. It was absolutely never really addressed appropriately in the law enforcement realm. And that's a culture, quite frankly, the culture that needs to change. And I think we all know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So under a Charmaine Mcguffey, regime, if an officer witnesses if a sheriff deputy witnesses another deputy abusing an inmate but does nothing, will the policy be that both of these officers will be addressed?
Absolutely. And I've been, I was in charge of the training academy for years, many, many years down at that jail. And that's the way I trained officers. If you don't speak up, you're culpable, right? You're a part of the guilty behavior. If you don't speak out and speak up, and in that way, I was trying to empower officers to say, listen, this isn't right. And I will tell you this: there are officers down there that have spoken up, that have come to the table and said, hey, this isn't right, that's not right, and pointed things out. Those officers have been, routinely silenced, routinely ignored. And, you're only going to keep doing that so long before, you are so injured that you just have to take care of you. I think people can relate to that. But absolutely, you're there, you don't point it out, you're a part of the issue.
Ashula wants to know, you say that you want to improve the food in the jail, but what type of rehabilitative programs would you like to see be incorporated or increased or improved in the local prison system?
Well, there's a number of facets there that I want to address. One, I did create the Women's Heroin Recovery Pod, so women could start working on their recovery from addiction immediately upon getting to jail. I created the Men's Veterans Pod so that men who are veterans who suffer from PTSD and homelessness can get the right kind of help. Men's exit pods, so that men are getting ready to get out of jail, can link up to getting their licenses back, can find gainful good employment and things like that, so that we're not, punishing people for the rest of their lives. And I'm going to bring in more programs than that. I'm going to improve education. The median education of someone who's incarcerated over and over again in jail is about fifth grade, and we need to improve that. I mean, come on, there has to be, a system inside that jail that, again, empowers you to do better. And so I will bring in education. I'm going to bring in life skills situations, real stuff. Counseling is great, and I'm all for that. Let's counsel someone on different issues in their mental health and so forth. But let's also talk about the real world and what pushes you forward. So those are things I'm going to do.
Follow up on her question specifically for the larger Black population in the prison. What ideas do you have to put in place specifically for the Black population?
So one of the ideas I have is to bring the community in, right? I want to bring in people from the Black population who want to be peer mentors, who want to help those who are incarcerated, who understand what the difficulties are that people face who are African American, who are Black. And I want to increase that engagement. I want to increase the engagement of, grandma wants to know how someone's doing in jail that she has an interest in. Well, we need to be talking to her, and we need to be working with her so that she can, create good, successful plans for whoever she cares about that happen to end up there in our facility. I want to improve education for the African American people that are in our jail, and quite frankly, everyone. But, there are ways that we engage the community who are really our boots on the ground, and they know what's necessary. I want them to come in and tell us what we don't know. And there's plenty we don't know, Nathan.
Speaking with Charmaine Mcguffey, Black Policy wants to know that, going back to what you talked about earlier about how you went to Jim Neal when you were the major and you tried to tell him about some of the abuses that you saw. Black Policy wants to know, how many bad officers did you turn in? Actual number.
Actual number, I'm going to say I spoke out, and this is, again, ballpark because I don't have my documents in front of me. I spoke out about at least 4 or 5 incidences of true excessive, what I saw and knew immediately, because there does have to be investigations when things look a little different, or, could have gone this way or that way. But there were at least 5 that I absolutely knew, when I looked at it, I thought, oh, this has to get addressed. This cannot stand, right? But that's the answer to the question.
Antoinette on Facebook wants to know, one of the requirements of getting hired to be a probation officer, adult and juvenile, is to take a polygraph test. Perfect for officers too. Maybe if we question applicants' ethics, we can find their motives behind wanting to be in that career.
I agree with that. I think our vetting process needs to be very extensive. And there are people who are motivated for the very right reasons to come into that career. There are people that are motivated just to have that power. I think we all know that. I'm just going to plainly say it. But there are also people, Nathan, who come into the career, particularly in the jail, because they need a job, right? They want a job, they want to do well, and then they learn that they like it, particularly if they're managed well. Particularly if they see things that are right happening, they want to stay there. They want to do that job. That's what happened to me. I grew into that job, just loving it more and more every day. So, yeah.
My son was in for a second, but I heard everything you said. I appreciate it. Janair wants to know, is there still a shortage of officers? Is there any chance to create a larger scale apprenticeship program to recruit those directly from the neighborhood? I think she's meaning like neighborhoods here in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's something that we need to explore and that we can create. Here's the thing, we're working on a blank slate here, more or less. We can create what we can imagine. and anything we can imagine, we can put to the table. And I'm a leader that is not afraid to go down a path, and that may not work all the way, right? So then we go to another path. You know, you have to be willing to try and experience, and I am. I think that's a great idea. I think we should mentor people who want to work inside a jail.
Kim Hardy writes, Bruce is horrible for Hamilton County. No more cowboys. Vote McGuffey for sheriff. That's Cam Hardy giving you an endorsement there. You know what? When I found out about your opponent's history,
right?
When I found out about your opponent's history, it was very troubling to me. That drawdown. It was very troubling to me when I found out that your opponent had, in the line of duty, killed an unarmed man. In a post George Floyd, as a black man, I had a lot of question marks. I've reached out to him several times, and it looks like he's going to stonewall the black community and take that strategy. I guess he's going to take a suburban, non-black strategy to try to become the sheriff deputy. But to me, it's about transparency. Like, he's questioning you about transparency, but he doesn't want to come to the black community, because we are the folks who are alarmed about this, and just simply explain it. As I said before, Charmaine, I mean, it wasn't an endorsement either way. To me, it was a very serious question about what happened. And what happened is, your opponent, along with another Cincinnati police officer, both armed, were confronted by an unarmed man, Mr. Brown, and, your opponent ended up shooting him. And by today's standards and today's systems, it just doesn't look right. It looks like there's a lot of question marks. There were an investigation that was done back in the 90s. And there were a lot of credible folks who felt as if your opponent did not have to use deadly force. And I think that's a very fair question. I've heard him, and he put out a statement talking about suicide by cop, which makes it even more troubling to me. I know you're aware of it because I was at the press conference and I asked you about it, but what is your opinion about that?
Well, my opponent, first of all, doesn't need to answer to me. He does need to answer to the public. He needs to answer to those people who he is asking to trust him to be the top elected law enforcement position in Hamilton County. I stood on a record of holding deputies accountable. I've been transparent. People can ask me anything. And, I find my opponent to be incredibly naive if he thinks that he can run for the top elected official in Hamilton County of law enforcement and have people not want to know about his record. I mean, I don't understand that.
I don't get it either.
You're exactly right. He's done nothing but point fingers at me. He's talked about this whole thing regarding city council and Cincinnati police wouldn't hire me. Well, you know what? I called out excessive use of force. I'm on the other side of that situation. I'm the person who stood up and said, I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to take a stand on this. And that's what I did. And now he wants to try to capitalize and vilify me for that behavior. What I say is this. Look, if you don't think Bruce Hoffbauer is being transparent with you now, what's going to happen when he becomes sheriff? Right? I mean, as a candidate, he's not going to talk to you. Do you think he's going to care what you have to say as a sheriff? It's my question. Hello?
I'm sorry, Charmaine. It's almost like you were reading my mind. Exactly. That's been my issue from day one when I found out about it and reached out for and as I said before, this is, I'd like to believe this is a fair platform. Speak your mind, speak whatever you want, but you're right. If you can't be transparent during the process of becoming someone who's in power, then once you get in power, why would we expect you to do anything else? I mean, I just don't get it. It seems to be a very fair question. And in a post-George Floyd world, I don't care who you are, Democrat, Republican, male, black, it makes no difference. If this is in your record, you should come to the community that's affected by it the most and explain it and talk about it. It could be, we could have a conversation. It could be completely plausible. Okay, great. We understand. You got to do what you got to do. But we're all smart, intelligent people. By today's standard, 2 armed police officers killing an unarmed man with no weapon. I mean, that's just no good. It looks real bad. And the systems that were in place back in the 90s in Cincinnati that was before the collaborative, right?
Yep,
It was post
right.
collaborative. It was a whole different world right then. We know there was a lot less accountability for members of law enforcement. So I'll just leave it at that. Speaking of the collaborative, are Hamilton County Sheriff deputies currently under, and do they have to adhere to the collaborative? And if not, do you think they should?
They do not have to adhere to the collaborative. And yes, that's exactly why I want to bring a citizens review board to our department, because I want to initiate some of those reforms. I want to initiate that conversation that the collaborative brings, and and the policies and procedures that the collaborative wants to see. I think it strengthens your police department, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're open to incorporating elements of the collaborative into the relationship with the Hamilton County Sheriff deputies.
Oh, I am. I absolutely am. I think you're exactly right. In this day and age, with the public outcry, I mean, and it's just not in this county, it's across the nation. Every police department is going to need to change their transparency. I think it's the only way that we move forward and create trust in the community. Because, quite frankly, I understand why there are people out there who don't trust law enforcement. And man, that just shouldn't be. You should trust in general. Everybody's not going to agree, Nathan. You know that, and I know that. We're not
Mm-hmm.
always all going to be on the same page, but there are those basics that we all need to know are true, right?
Absolutely. So let's talk about the diversity in terms of Hamilton County Sheriff deputies. Do you have
Hmm.
sort of like a ballpark number of the racial demographics of
Hmm.
who are the Hamilton County Sheriff deputies?
I would say our diversity, and mindful of the fact that I haven't been there for 3 years now, so I don't know who they've hired, what those demographics are,
Right.
but I would say it's about 5% of our department is of diversity. And even less than that are the African American men, women, and women in general who hold any rank at all in that department. I mean, it's I was the only woman to ever sit at that command table, period. And under Jim Neal, I would have been the last, obviously. So we don't have any diversity at that command table, and we need some.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he does have one. Yeah, he has a major, Earl Price, who is sitting on his command staff, who was made a major, by the way, once they got rid of me. So I just don't adhere to that. Hey, we have one person of diversity here, so we're good. I don't think that's the way you do things, and I think it's because those people have not been mentored and promoted over these years.
So not mentored, not promoted. Is there anything about the recruitment process? I mean, can Hamilton County Sheriff Department do a better job of specifically targeting, African American candidates and applicants? I never really hear about it. I mean, I've heard about it with the Cincinnati Police Department, but I never really hear about the recruitment process for Hamilton County Sheriff deputies. Seems like it's
Hmm.
like in the dark.
Well, it is in the dark, and it's in the dark just because Jim Neal is not a transparent sheriff. I mean, that's why it's in the dark. It's not going to be in the dark when I pin on the badge, because I'm going to tell people what it is. But I will say this, and these are things that I just hear, things come to me. Obviously, I know a lot of people in the business. We have a new recruiting officer for the sheriff's office, and her name is Sergeant Michelle Moore. And from what I understand, she has been doing a fabulous job. She's African American. She's been in the business a very, very long time. I trust her. When I heard she held that position, I thought, there you go. Somebody's thinking, right? And I think she's doing a really good job. That's the info I've been hearing, is that she's out there actively looking for diversity, and she is the real deal. There's no doubt about it. So, there are those successes that we can grow in our department.
What number, or what's your goal then? So if we're talking about 5% overall, and even less in terms
Mm-hmm.
of who's inside the Justice Center. If you become sheriff
Mm-hmm.
deputy, what's your number? What's the number that you're looking at, and you can say, listen, we're in the right track in terms of having true diversity in terms of Hamilton County sheriffs.
Well, the right number would be, quite frankly, a 50-50, right? So that everybody has an equal piece of the pie. Now, we know that historically in sheriff's offices, the way you gain rank is you take tests and you're mentored and you're selected and so forth. And those things matter. It matters how we bring people forward and the opportunities we give them. So, my view of the world is, I live in a world where I like everybody to have an equal piece of the pie. And
Hmm.
that's what I'm going to strive for. I'm going to strive for a 50-50. We can get as close as we can. I think that it gives us, there's a lot of room for growth there.
Hmm.
There is a lot of room for growth.
Speaking of room for growth, I mean, what mistakes have you made? I mean, reflecting back, you've been out of it for 3 years, but looking
Hmm.
back, have you made mistakes, things that you would change, things you've grown from? If so, I'd like to know about it.
Yeah, I think that as a manager, you're constantly learning. I think you do sit down and do some self assessment as you move along. And I've done that. And I've thought, there's times in my career that I zigged when I should have zagged. But I clearly see that, right? And I seek out other people's opinions and their feedback for that. And quite frankly, I am a very coachable person. You can give me feedback and it doesn't have to be all glowing. You're not going to hurt my feelings, for God's sakes. I need a mirror too, right? I need people to say, hey, this wasn't something that I thought you should say. I don't understand why you did this, and then I can say, well, either I have an explanation for that, or perhaps I need to change it. And that's what's happened to me my whole career. I haven't been perfect. No, I will say I only have one discipline in my file, and that's because I went to a gay bar. But other than that, no, I certainly, I'm human. There's times when when you're tired or you're trying to get something done and things don't, turn out right. But hey, that happens to all of us. So, yes, have I made mistakes? I certainly have. I want to learn from them and I want to do better every time.
Tracy wants to know, what is your plan for Lincoln Heights?
My plan for Lincoln Heights is to engage their community council and find out what Lincoln Heights wants. That's what I want to do. I want to find out what they want, who they want working there, what kinds of things really interest them in the ways that law enforcement can impact the community, how we as law enforcement officers can work with them on improving anything that they see as a priority in their community. Because, I feel for Lincoln Heights from a standpoint of they had their very own police department. And, that's a valuable thing when you have your own police department, because those are men and women that, that report directly to you, the city council, that likely, right? And that you've helped select. Well, when the sheriff's office takes it over, that you don't have that same kind of interaction, that same kind of control. And I think you should have it. So, yeah, I think Lincoln Heights, I want to pay attention to Lincoln Heights.
Jordan says 50-50 isn't equity, 70-30 is. That's what she says.
Okay.
Man.
Okay.
Are there anything you heard from the protesters that you saw and you thought, you know what, I hadn't thought about it that way. That's something I want to incorporate into my leadership style.
Yeah. From the protesters, and I heard a lot from the protesters, quite frankly. I was down there talking to them. And I think that I talked to people who were they're wounded by this process that we've all been forced to go through now. And they want to be a part of the change. They're willing to do the work to do that. And I think as a leader, that's going to be one of the things I'm bound to do, which is to listen to people who have ideas and want to improve the system. So, I've been in the system a very long time. So I've heard, quite frankly, a lot of the things that the protesters talk to me about. I've seen it in action.
Well, Charmaine, thank you for your time. I'm hoping we can catch up at least one more time before the election. There's so many things that
That'd
are
be great.
happening. There are always new questions, new things to discuss. But I really
Sure.
appreciate your time this morning, and I wish you the best.
Well, and I thank you, Nathan, and I'll just leave it with this. If you're outraged, show it with your actions and vote.
I like
That's all
it.
I ask.
Thank you for the call.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
appreciate
thanks.
it. Yeah, that was Charmaine Mcguffey. She's running for Hamilton County Sheriff. And I'm hoping to talk to her at least one more time. I'd love to do a debate between her and also Bruce Hoffbauer, but Bruce Hoffbauer doesn't want to talk to the black community. He doesn't want to talk to black men of any conscience and intelligence. So that might be difficult. So you have to make your own decisions about who you think is going to be best for you if you live in the city of Hamilton County. I'm sorry, you live in a county. If you live in Hamilton County, if you're affected by this race, and decide who you think is going to represent your interest the best. Let me take a quick break. I've got another guest coming in, scheduled for about 10 minutes from now. So I need to take a quick break. We'll come right back to your comments and your questions. I couldn't get everything in. I was jumping around from the choppers to also Facebook and then my own questions and thoughts as well. I try to get in as much as possible. Again, thank you so much for being here. Please like and share today's show. It means everything. And of course, the big question for today is pretty simple. And that question is, should Ohio reissue a stay-at-home order? Should Ohio reissue a stay-at-home order? I want you to think about that because we could be headed there. What do you think about the governor's plan where 7 counties he's requiring that they wear masks? Is that enough? Think about it, and we'll discuss on the other side. This is the Nathan Ivey Show. I'm live, I'm local, and I'm vocal, and I'll be right back right after this.
There are few times in life to make history. Hamilton County was founded 230 years ago, but has never elected a black county treasurer. It's time for change. Elect a proven, trusted, experienced candidate for Hamilton County Treasurer, Charlie Winburn. We know Charlie, and he knows us. Charlie Winburn was the former chairman of the Jobs and Growth Committee on Cincinnati City Council under the Honorable Democrat Mayor Mark Mallory. Winburn led the fight to keep 2,000 U.S. postal jobs in Cincinnati. He also fought for wage increases for thousands of city employees, especially our sanitation workers. Charlie Winburn will safeguard more than $1.4 billion in real estate taxes and will increase new home ownership and new jobs. On Tuesday, November 3rd, vote Charlie Winburn for Hamilton County Treasurer. Let's make history together.
I am Charlie Winburn, and I'm asking you for your vote, paid for by friends of Charlie Winburn.
This is Zoe Wesson. What side of history do you want to be on? The right side, or one where black people continue to be underrepresented in Hamilton County? Now's your chance to end 230 years of exclusion. In Charlie Winburn, we have a man that's received the Cincinnati NAACP President's Award, who fought on the Ohio Civil Rights Commission for 6 years, who received the Baptist Ministers Conference Community Service Award. Charlie Winburn has received the Southern Christian Leadership Conference Award and was honored by WDBZ The Buzz as Pastor of the Month. We know Charlie Winburn, and he knows us. He's the right man to put us on the right side of history. On Tuesday, November 3rd, vote for Charlie Winburn for Hamilton County Treasurer.
I am Charlie Winburn, and I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, November the 3rd, paid for by friends of Charlie Winburn.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
145 over 92.
180 over 111.
I had a heart attack and a cardiac arrest, and then a stroke.
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life. Lowering your high blood pressure could save you from a heart attack or stroke. If you've stopped your treatment plan, restart it or talk to your doctor about creating one that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
Now I'm, trying to get better, stronger than ever.
Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Charlie Winburn with Renew Community Church. It seems like the coronavirus came from nowhere. I have some good news that if you never quit and don't give up, out of nowhere, the way will be made for you and your family. Take your life back. Join Renew Community Church each Sunday, 11:45 a.m. on Facebook Live, facebook.com/CincyRenew. Rewrite your life while at home. Join Renew Community Church for the 12-week Rewrite.me series each Sunday on Facebook Live. Renew your life at home. Go to SundayConnectCircle.org for a free 12-week, 200-page PDF. Take your power back. Rewrite your life. Join Renew Community Church each Sunday at 11:45 a.m. on Facebook Live. Facebook.com/CINCI Renew. I am Charlie Winburn, and remember, out of nowhere, the way will be made for you and your family.
Mario fue pintor más de 30 años. Un día me dijeron que pintara el marco por dentro y pinté el lado de afuera.
Si algo se nota diferente, podría ser Alzheimer. Es momento de hablarlo. Un mensaje de the Alzheimer Association y the Ad Council.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
And good morning to you. Hope you're having a great morning wherever you might be listening from. This is the Nathan Ivey Show, broadcasting live from beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio, city of my birth. Good morning to you. Many thanks to Charmaine Mcguffey. She was my guest for almost an hour answering our questions. Again, when I bring people on, I want to get to your questions. Your questions, your thoughts, your opinion is the currency of the show. Coming up in about 4 minutes, scheduled to speak with Dave Zirin. He's a sports editor for The Nation magazine and also the editor and founder of edgeofsports.com. You can check it out. He talks about the intersection, the collision, if you will, of sports and politics. And, you know, there's all this conversation going on with the NFL. They've now issued, at least Roger Goodell has issued somewhat of an apology to Colin Kaepernick. There's questions about what that means in the future. The NBA, there was a conversation about whether they should return to play or would that be a distraction. So I want to talk with David about all of that and get his opinion about it. He's a prolific author, and you should check him out. If you're into that kind of conversation, if that interests you, if you're into the sports world and into the political world, you'll probably like his flows. Good morning to you, and let's get back to things. 513-873-7134. If you want to share your thoughts, there I am. Here I am. I'm still with you. It's a beautiful day. Thank you for all the questions from the choppers. I'm sorry I get everything in. But perhaps what I can do is take your questions and then send them to Charmaine. And perhaps she can answer them, and then I can read those questions. I mean, we only have so much time. And for Bruce Hoffbauer and the friends and fans of Bruce Hoffbauer, I offer the same opportunity for you to tell your story, to talk about your campaign. I have questions about what happened in the 90s. But I have many more questions. You know, what does that mean? I mean, what type of sheriff would you be? And, you know, these racist strategies to not talk to the black community, I think should not work. And I hope they do not work, quite honestly. Although I'm not endorsing anyone. You should make your own decision based upon what's best for you. You know, what you hear the answers to these questions. If they satisfy you, they do. If they don't, they don't. And you should vote accordingly. But in these days and times, I'll be honest with you. In these days and times, I got a real issue with anyone who would want to become Hamilton County Sheriff, but yet you don't want to talk to the community about what happened back in the 90s. It's very relevant. It's very relevant. I'm sorry. Quick call, and then we'll move on. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. What's up, Big Nation? Man, Vince in the building. How you doing?
Hey, what up, Vince? Good morning to you.
Man, good morning to you, man. First of all, I want to say fire interview, brother. Fire interview.
Thank you.
That interview was very informative.
Thank you.
Sheriff McGuffey, man, she definitely answered a lot of questions that many of us have had. And I just want to say, like, you know, at the end of the interview, she definitely summed up so much that I had wanted to ask her if I had an opportunity to sit with her in person. And she just has to know that she's really on the side of history right now. Everyone is watching. And she said key words that I hope that the community holds her to, which is accountability, the inclusion of things, 50-50 split of the ratio of black to white officers, community outreach. These are key words that will stand out in her election. And I'm not even going to talk about the other dude, whatever his name is, Hauser, whoever he is. He's not going to show. He's too much of a coward. But I understand that he's trying to depend on the good old boy network to get him into office. So if we're going to vote for Charmaine Mcguffey, everyone, you have to understand that every vote needs to be counted. So if you are going to vote for her, you got to get out there and we got to really push everyone to the polls. That's the bottom line on that. Now, as far as the mask order, listen, I just had somebody come in my store just now and ask me, starting today, will I have to wear a mask? Well, you know what? If the city and the state is mandating it, you're not going to get an argument out of me. But just know that you may not get served at the place of your convenience if you don't have one. So I think that Mike DeWine, of course, like you said earlier, he made a mistake, following 45 like everyone else does. And I don't understand how long will the Republican Party continue to allow this guy to continue to act like he is a wild cowboy in the West and just firing his gun at a rapid rate. It's like everyone is holding 6-shooters and he's holding, a reloadable automatic with bullets that's coming out of nowhere. I just don't understand. But yeah, man, like I said, fire interview, man. You set the day off right for me, brother. I appreciate it.
Hey, you set my day off right with this phone call, man. I appreciate it, man. Anything else, Vince?
Okay, well, I know you got that interview getting ready to come on. You know what I mean? Shout out to all the choppers. Shout out to everyone in Cincinnati. And I just want to say, Nate Ivy in the building. Oh, one last thing. Remember that bird watching situation that took place in Central Park?
Yeah.
Yo, I just sent you I just shared it in your messenger. Hey, when you read it, I'm not going to say anything about it right now, but we definitely need to pass that or you definitely going to have a laugh for the day. But look, man, I'm going to chop it over with you later, Big Nate. I'm going to holler at y'all later. Yo, let's keep that energy flowing. Chopper out. Holla.
Appreciate it. That's Vince right there. I appreciate the energy, man. Appreciate the energy. That's Vince. Appreciate you, man. Always good to hear from you, man. Yeah, again, the question for today, aside from our interviews, is should Ohio reissue the stay-at-home order? I'm just looking at the writing on the wall. I think that we rushed out too early. I think our Republican governor was following 45. I think it's a mistake. But that's just my opinion. I want to hear yours. As I said, I have a scheduled conversation coming up with Dave Zirin. I think we got Dave on the line. Let's go straight to the phones. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, Dave Zirin, what's up, brother? How you doing, man?
Oh, man, I mean, it's crazy in this world, but I'm just appreciate reconnecting with you right now.
Oh, most definitely, man. Family good? Business good?
Well, you know how it is. We're surviving, if not thriving. Pandemic and the like. My wife's a teacher, so all sorts of difficulties and insecurities about going back to school this fall or not. So we're trying to make it one day at a time, trying to figure things out.
I hear that. So for folks who don't know, Dave is he's a writer. You can check out. He's the founder of edgeofsports.com, prolific, written many books about the intersection between sports and politics. And as I understand, in case something has changed, Dave, set me straight. Also, the sports editor over at The Nation. Does that hit the resume?
Yep, no, still doing that.
Still doing that.
Yes,
good.
Sir.
Well, man, let's talk about it. I know you talk about sports and politics, and I want to get straight into it. But just your general observation, right, in this Trump world post George Floyd, with all of the momentum and energy that we've seen in the streets. I'm curious as to what is your general observation about it, and also moving forward.
Well, that's the thing, is the concern about moving forward in the face of what I think is going to be a hellacious backlash against, and I'm already seeing it, against the folks who have taken to the streets, against the folks who are pushing for change. I mean, we've seen them try to dollop out things to make people satisfied, like small things, like saying, oh, we're going to, try to change this television program, or we're going to try to, take down this monument, when what people are crying for is racial equity and police reform. And so the concern, of course, is that they're going to throw out a couple of crumbs and then really go after the folks who've been out in the streets. And we've been seeing that here in D.C., where I live, where in recent days the police have been absolutely vicious going against the protesters. It's not getting any media attention. And, you have to follow the right people on Twitter to even know that it's going on. Or you go down there yourself and you see it with your own eyes. And so that's the concern where things are right now. I mean, I think we've lived through history these last couple of months. I mean, it's been the largest protest in the history of the United States in terms of sheer numbers. It's been a revelation in so many respects. But, there are a lot of forces of, I mean, there's no other way to put it. There are a lot of forces of evil out there. It's way beyond just Donald Trump. And, they're waiting in the wings to try to make sure that, people, they co-opt a little bit with some crumbs here, and then there they go after people. They go after their throats.
Speak to it, man. I mean, that's the same energy and conversation that we've been having here in the city of Cincinnati. Because just like in D.C., we now have a Black Lives Matter mural here on the streets of Cincinnati. And I've been urging folks that's cool and all. I'm pro-Black artist. But, if it's not about equity, policy, and tangibles, then we really haven't accomplished anything. I know that, was D.C. the first city to put the Black Lives Matter mural on the streets?
Yep.
And what kind of, is there a rallying around that happening in D.C.? Is there policy behind it in D.C.? I'm wondering how people are reacting to that there.
No, exactly. No, when it went down and when they started Black Lives Matter Plaza, which is really just right across from the White House, it was interesting because on the one hand, it was started as a response to that infamous moment where Trump, took the tear gas and the pepper spray to the protesters and cleared them out so he could do that ridiculous photo op in front of the church holding the Bible upside down. And so in response to that, it wasn't just artists, it was the mayor as well, said, okay, this is now going to be Black Lives Matter Plaza, and they set this up. And so it became like this locus point in the center for people to go to who were angry, who were upset, who wanted to protest. Even if you didn't know any of the protest organizers, even if you didn't know, what was what, you knew you could go to Black Lives Matter Plaza. So there was something beautiful about that. But at the same time, the mayor, Muriel Bowser, who, by the way, endorsed Michael Bloomberg in the Democratic primaries, while that's going on, she's also sending in the police to rouse people who stay there too late. She's enforcing curfews. She's acting in a way like a neoliberal 21st century mayor, not acting like somebody who's on the side of the movement. And so, there were people who right away were saying, wait a minute, don't be fooled by this okey doke. Don't be fooled by having a plaza named BLM. Don't be fooled by having this big mural on the ground. This is, this is classic tactics. Please don't be fooled by this. So it's been complicated and contradictory here. And it's made worse by the fact that the mayor is not somebody who's ever shown herself to be on the side of anybody other than herself and her own ambition.
Speaking with Dave Zirin, same here, man. I mean, we got the mural here, and I think it's a lot of good, smart people involved. But we got people dancing in the streets after the mural is finished, and yet there's no tangibles put in place, no equity in policy. And I'm like, hey, let's make sure we get to the finish line, and we all understand what that finish line is. Because the system has always given us crumbs or symbols or pacified us here or there, bought off leaders, things like that. And for me, the time of the day is just too serious to fall for any of that. So That's interesting to hear what's going on in D.C. Let's stay in D.C., man, because you and I have talked about this. You've written about this for over a decade, and that is the offensive imagery that's used by some of the sports teams. But now in a post-George Floyd world, when the whole world, the country has reacted, for the first time, we're hearing some real movement. Like there's universities and high schools in the Ohio area that are now rethinking about some of their mascots in which they're, to me, dehumanizing the images of non-white people. Same thing with the Washington Redskins. I mean, I've had a problem with that as long as I've been a conscious black man and understood what the problem is. Now is now the time in which Snyder and others are going to make some movement in that. Could we really see a name change with the Washington Redskins? And for folks who are on the fence, like, well, what difference does that make? Can you kind of explain from your viewpoint why it's important?
Well, first and foremost, people have to see it as far more than just symbolism or symbolic. I mean, we know, first of all, from numerous academic studies from the American Psychiatric Association that native mascotry actually harms native children, that it destroys their sense of self and who they are, and it turns their own minds against them in terms of how they see, the parameters of their own ambitions. So Native American mascotry, it harms Native kids. That's the first thing people have to realize. The second thing I think people have to realize looking at this is that the name of the Washington football team, this is what the studies also show, is that when people get attached to that name, it actually allows them to ignore what's happening in what's called Indian country. And the realities of what it means to be Native American in the United States is absolutely brutal, from child mortality rates to police brutality to police violence. I mean, it's a very, very rough existence by every statistical measure. And mascotting allows people to look away from the reality of what it's actually like to be Native American in the United States. To live in a state of living in a country where you've been dispossessed and impoverished. So that's the importance of changing the name. The other importance of changing the name, of course, is that it's a dictionary-defined slur. It's racist. And so what it does is it allows, racism to be just baked into the cake and part of the bloodstream of the National Football League, of American sports, and, of course, of, where I live, the DMV, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, where people have clung to this name, like it's the most important thing in the world. So to see us so close to it being changed is just a huge deal. And then lastly, I got to throw in that, it's so connected not just to racism against Native Americans, but it's deeply intertwined with racism against black people in the United States. The name was coined by a man named George Preston Marshall, who was a white supremacist, who was an owner of the franchise. And so all of this stuff is extremely connected. Now, I think it's so important that people also realize that for us to win this would be the culmination of like a 50-year battle that includes some amazing Native American organizers and activists who've been fighting on this along the way. But I've been interviewing those activists along the way, and they've said, like in the last couple of weeks, and they have said to me that there's no way this would be happening if it wasn't for the Black Lives Matter movement and this 50-state uprising against racism, which has basically rearranged everything in terms of what our expectations and goals should be. So very excited about the thought that we could actually be seeing this victory and the name finally changed. That being said, the person who owns the team is a man named Daniel Snyder, and he is a bigot, and he is somebody who I would not trust as far as I could throw him. And I would be very concerned about thinking that this is a done deal at this point, because he's very impulsive, he's very erratic, he loves this name, and he's feeling the pressure now. But if we let the pressure up, I guarantee you'll see him back out of doing this.
Well, I mean, should that be a goal? Should that be a goal? Do you watch the NFL? Are you still watching? Have you been watching the games over the years?
No, not from a consumer standpoint. I keep up with it from the perspective of my job, which is to write about the intersection of sports and politics.
Right.
And to follow, what players are protesting, what's the mood of the union and things like that, questions about the state of the Washington team name. But when it comes to following it from a fan perspective, no, I haven't been doing that since they showed Colin Kaepernick the door, honestly.
Speaking of which, now Roger Goodell has issued, as close to an apology as I guess you're going to get, saying that, he and I guess the other owners should have, or the owners, because he's not an owner, should have listened to the black players, not necessarily Colin Kaepernick. What's a win, in your opinion, in that Colin Kaepernick situation? Like a win for the community?
Well, Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think for people in the community itself, the important thing is to make sure that if he wants to work in the NFL, that he has employment to do so, and he has the opportunity to do so. Because for a lot of folks, that symbolism is really strong. I mean, people talk all the time about cancel culture, but what it really means is when people like Colin Kaepernick can't find work just because he dared to make himself known politically and put himself out there on the political scene. And so I think that yes, there's something symbolic about Colin Kaepernick finding his way back into the league. That doesn't help people on a street level by any stretch, but sometimes the symbolic is also very important, as long as we don't stop with the symbolic. Like taking down a statue, Colin Kaepernick finding work. I mean, these things aren't the same thing as police reform. They're not the same thing as justice for Breonna Taylor. But what they do is that they give people confidence, and they give people a sense that, that their horizons are something that can be reached if they're willing to organize and fight for it.
I have mixed feelings about this whole Colin Kaepernick thing. Like, I remember that the NAACP, or I take that back, I think it was Martin Luther King III, one of the King's children, issued a statement saying that he thought that black people should boycott the NFL until the NFL gave Colin Kaepernick a job back. And as I look at the landscape, Dave, I look at it a little bit differently. Maybe I'm looking a little larger than that. I mean, for me, a win would be having a black-owned majority NFL franchise, or having a franchise that is majority owned by the players, former, current, and future players. Because this is, as you've written about it so eloquently, is a game created for and by elite white men, right? Rich white guys primarily. And unless you're at the table and you have some decision-making ability, then it really doesn't make a difference. What do you think about that? To me, a win is a majority minority-owned, majority black-owned team. I even like the idea of a player-owned team. And that way they can interact with and change the rules as an owner. To me, that's the only way you can really have an impact.
I love it. I think that's fantastic. I mean, this is a league that has had a difficult time even finding black coaches to hire and black executives. I mean, it's 3 black head coaches right now. It's 2 black executives in terms of being general managers, and 0 black ownership in a league. That's why Michael Bennett, the NFL Pro Bowler, who I did a book with called Things That Make White People Uncomfortable,
right,
he said it's a mistake to think that the NFL is integrated, because the NFL is segregated between those who actually pour out their blood, sweat, and tears on the field and those who get to watch and profit off of their pain. So it's a segregated enterprise, not an integrated one. And I love that idea you just put forward. I mean, I think this is one of those moments where you have to ask for the moon. You're not even ask, but you have to demand the moon.
Demand, right.
And so demand the moon. And so it's those moments don't come along very often. And so I agree with you. I think this would be a moment to push on that.
Yeah. And then if there's another Colin Kaepernick type situation, you've got a majority black-owned team that may give him an opportunity. And they may be a shining light for the other owners who I don't think they can hear you unless you're on their level. You're not on the level unless you sit at that ownership table, right next to Jerry and all the other owners.
Yeah, Jerry, who's been notoriously quiet since all of this started. Jerry, who's got something to say about everything, but nothing to say about this. And now some Cowboy players are starting to come out and complain and say, his quiet is actually speaking volumes. So that's going to be a very interesting situation.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yes, the coming civil war on America's team.
And, the NFL has, at least this has been put out there, that they may be playing the Black National Anthem during the first game. I'm thinking to myself, who cares about, you talk about meaningless gestures, so what? Black National Anthem? What does that mean?
Lift every voice and sing. That people are mocking that across the spectrum, particularly on the protest side of things, as the emptiest of empty gestures, something that means absolutely nothing. No, they need to change the name of the Washington football team. They need to find Colin Kaepernick a job. They need to actually hire some black folks in executive positions. And then I agree with what you're saying, Nathan. Like, they need to shoot for ownership and stop this nonsense of having a league that's dominated by black talent, owned by almost exclusively white men.
Speaking with Dave Zirin, he is the founder of edgesports.com and a sports editor at The Nation, prolific author. If you're into politics and sports, well, he writes about the intersection of sports and politics. You might be into it. Check him out, edgesports.com. Your latest column is about Maya Moore, entitled Maya Moore for the Win. I'm aware of the story, but can you very quickly tell us about, Maya Moore, who she is, and her activism and what it led to?
Oh, definitely, because she needs to be lifted up to a profound degree. Maya Moore might be the greatest, one of the great basketball players to ever live. She's a all-star in the WNBA, an MVP, a champion, all the rest of it. And she gave up 2 years of her prime ability to both earn money and tally up Hall of Fame statistics to fight for the freedom of a man named Jonathan Irons, who's connected to her family, who was imprisoned for a crime he did not commit for, I believe, 22 years of a 50-year sentence. And she got him out. And it was by, and I think it's a beautiful story because it shows, like really an unprecedented degree of sacrifice by a professional athlete to fight against racism and for social justice and against the criminal justice system. But it's also a very humbling story because it makes you think about all the people who are behind bars who don't have an athlete guardian angel trying to fight for their freedom. Because if there's one Jonathan Irons in prison, then how many others are there that we're just not going to hear about? I certainly know of somebody here in Maryland who's been behind bars for decades named Kenny Collins, and we got him out of death row for a crime he did not commit. But then they just commuted his sentence because the public pressure was too high. And, we still got to get him out. And so, if you don't have a Maya Moore, if you just have a Dave Zirin, trying to fight for your freedom, the effect is far less. So it's a beautiful story, but also a story that we should see as very humbling as we understand how deep racism is in the criminal justice system.
And just so I understand, he didn't commit the crime. Was it mistaken identity? Is that what happened? Or was he railroaded by a corrupt system? Let's keep it real.
Yeah, he was 16 and given a 50-year sentence, tried as an adult. He was poor, he was homeless, he was and he wasn't there. There was no physical evidence linking him to what was a break-in and an assault. That was the crime. 50 years for a break-in and an assault. He said he did not commit. And there was no evidence. It was an all-white jury. I mean, yeah, it was a railroading, without question.
I mean, it just speaks to the power of, one person's determination. And I guess she leveraged her star power as well and her resources to make it happen. Now, is she going to go back to the WNBA now, or is she past that prime? Do you know?
Well, she's still just 31, so it's there for her if she wants to go back. But she's also, and so I'm not sure because she's also on fire right now about all right, we need to change this system. This isn't just the story of one person. We have to get deeper than this. And, there's so much racism built into the cake of the criminal justice system. We need a new cake. We got to dismantle this. Mm-hmm. And so this has radicalized her in the process as well. So she's not content. And that's inspiring to me because if she's not content, then we shouldn't be content either.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Speaking with Dave Zirin. Hey, Dave, what do you think about the story of McCord Maker? I hope I'm not mangling his first name. It's the young, highly sought after a recruit that decided to go to Howard over some of the bigger schools.
It's important. It's important that HBCUs get supported by top talent. It's going to make him a legend, I think. I mean, I'm surprised another player hasn't, because then you're not just another person in a basketball factory like at a Duke or a Kentucky, but you're somebody who is raising up an entire network of colleges, and you become like a folk hero. So, Chris Webber almost did this when he came out of high school as one of the top players in the country. and that was 30 years ago. And so, I'm surprised it's actually taken this long for somebody to say, hey, I'm going to do this. So it's a great step. The one thing, though, is we have to realize that it doesn't change the fundamental injustice of college sports, which is that players generate billions of dollars in wealth and don't get to see it. And so, but anytime anybody challenges the almighty power of the NCAA, I mean, it makes a big difference.
It's potentially revolutionary if we can get more highly sought after recruits to do it over time, right? I mean, just one recruit here or there is like a story, it's cool, but I mean, just imagine if there was a mass exodus on a 10-year basis of all of the best recruits going to HBCUs. That could potentially change the college sports entertainment paradigm to flip more power to the HBCUs. Or would it? I mean, would that ever happen? I mean, is the system set up to allow something like that to happen? I mean, is it fair to ask these young athletes to sacrifice the possibility of going pro?
Well, I mean, two things. One, I think if they're good enough, they're going to go pro. I mean, they're going to get found and they're going to play. But no, the weight of this should not be on their shoulders. I agree. I think that should be a general point of principle from the very start.
Somebody wants to know, do you still think football causes more concussions and worse concussions than boxing?
Yes, I do. I think that the evidence is there pretty strongly that because football has this consistent level of what are called subconcussive hits, where people have to slam into each other over and over again, and because you don't see the damage of the brain slashing against the skull because of the helmet, that it's more harmful than boxing, where you actually see the damage develop on people's faces as you go. And so at least you have a sense of when somebody isn't getting harmed, and you can have a referee call it. You don't see that in the NFL. You play 60 minutes no matter what, and no matter what condition your head is in.
So, Dave, thanks for your time, man. What's on your radar screen? I mean, what's your next column?
Well, I'm working on this book right now called The Kaepernick Effect, where I've already interviewed like 100 young people who've taken a knee during sporting events, particularly during 2016, 2017, and talking to them about their motivations and why they did what they did and how it changed their communities.
Huh. So there is a caller. That's interesting. It's funny because I was having a conversation with a caller who's not a big fan of yours, by the way. I'm not sure what his issue is with you, but I don't know. Somehow he's equating you to Sean King or something like that. But I said the same thing to him. Yeah. He's going hard at you, but everybody has their opinion. And I think there is a Kaepernick effect. Yeah, that's interesting. When do you think that'll be published?
Next year. That's the hope.
Next year. Okay. Well, Dave, listen, man, always a pleasure. Appreciate your time, man. Stay up, and I'll catch up with you.
No, Nathan, you've just been doing this work for so long, and it's so appreciated. Thank you so much for being you.
Always, man. Take it easy, brother. Take it easy. That's Dave Zirin, everybody. Appreciate the call. Interesting thoughts. You can find his work over at edgeofsports.com. Again, if you're into sports and politics and the intersectionality and also the history of it, if you want to know what modern day sports athletes are doing in terms of getting social and political, you should check out Dave Zirin. Follow him on Twitter. That's what he does. That Maya Moore story deserves a whole lot more press. I'm going to reach out to Maya Moore to see if we can get her on the show to talk about it. That is huge right there. I'll put it back on the screen. And she put it, see, to me, greatness and community impact it's all about sacrifice. Like anybody can build this or build that, but are you willing to give up something for the larger community? Are you willing to give up something that you've worked for your entire life for the community? That to me is a different level. That's the reason why I say Muhammad Ali was the greatest. It has nothing to do with pugilism. It has nothing to do with his boxing skills. It's because he was willing to put it, and he did sacrifice it all at the height of his powers for his consciousness, for his people, for his politics. That's why I respect Muhammad Ali. Some people get into, he was the greatest boxer. Yeah, he was a good boxer. You can say he was the greatest. I mean, whatever your opinion is, it is what it is. But The fact that that man was willing to sacrifice, and he did sacrifice. I mean, I think there's a lot about the Muhammad Ali story that people just don't know. They don't know that this brother was broke with a family, right? Best boxer in the world, stripped. And guess what? He was absolutely right about the Vietnam War. Muhammad Ali was right. What did he say? Them folks never called me the N-word. He's right about that. You know, it was a war that got a lot of people killed, broke up a lot of families. And for what? What did we gain? Nothing that's discernible to me. So props to Muhammad Ali and all the other people out there that are willing to sacrifice for the cause. I respect it. I respect it. What do you think? 513-873-7134. Hopefully, I know the volume was a little bit low with Dave at the beginning, but I pumped it up. Hopefully, you're able to hear everything he had to say. Again, you can follow him over at edgeofsports.com and check it out for yourself. Make your own determination. Appreciate you for being here. 513, I'll say it again, 873-7134. If you had wanted to get into the show, we had a couple of guests set up, and it may have been difficult for you or just wasn't the right time. Feel free to call in now. And I will take your phone call. Let me check my time here. Coming up on two hours here. I'm pledged to give you a straight 2-hour show at the very least every single day. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Had you heard about that Maya Moore story? Props to her for that. McCord Maker, I think it's a great story if you can get more people. I mean, I look at McCord Maker the same way I look at Blackout. It's a great the Blackout movement that started yesterday. It is great. I love it. But it needs to be enduring. Same thing with these highly sought after black athletes. You know, where you decide to go to school can have a tremendous impact if you can get enough of them to go to make the same kind of move. If it's just one person here or there, it's kind of like, yeah, you know, this is cool and all, but we'll talk about it for a little while and then you just move on. But back to my original conversation with you. If you live in the state of Ohio, should Ohio reissue the stay-at-home order? Should Ohio reissue the stay-at-home order? And I see Fame still going hard. You know, I love to link the two of y'all up on a phone call one day, maybe sometime in the future, and then you can talk. I can get out of it, and you can talk directly to Dave about what your concerns are and your issues. I appreciate it. Like I said, it doesn't matter. Look, no good deed goes unpunished. It don't matter what you're doing. It don't matter if you sacrificing or not for the community or what your intentions are. People are always going to have a problem with what you do. It's always going to be somebody. Sometimes it's valid. Sometimes it's not. Got to make it up on a case-by-case basis. But let me go back to your chat here. Let me jump inside the chop shop. Let me go back a little bit. Clue Magic writes, Kanye needs to quit smoking crack. Is that what he's doing? Damn. Schuler writes, thank you, Nathan, for asking our questions. I tried to get them all in, but I've got my own questions. I'm trying to get questions from two different sides of the internet, so to speak, Facebook and also Spreaker. But I tried to get it in. CG Dub, absolutely. Drop writes, Blackout Tuesday was a bust. I mean, have they quantified that yet? I mean, I think any efforts to organize black people, it could never be a bust. I don't believe that at all. I mean, the effort, any serious effort to organize, whether it be over what issue, I don't think that can ever be a bust. I think exercising, it's just like exercising your muscles, right? When you exercise your muscles, no matter what happens afterward, whether you become like some big bodybuilder or whatever, it's good for your body. And I think exercising the organization muscle for black people is good for black people's body, so to speak. So just on that level, I disagree with you, Drop. But then secondly, from a more sort of fact-based standpoint, I mean, has it been quantified yet? Let me Google a little bit and see what I can find here. You're saying that it was a bust, huh? Okay. Well, again, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, brother, but not your own facts. Blackout Day. I think it's a little too early to quantify it. Let me see. This is from CBS News. Okay, let me jump around here. You say Blackout Day was a bust. You might want it to be a bust for your own personal reasons, but doesn't mean that that's necessarily true, Drop. Blackout Day draws attention to black spending power. Now, again, let me stop right there. Anything that draws attention to black spending power is a good thing, period. in and of itself, even if it's just one day, in my opinion. Okay. I guarantee you that Blackout Day opened somebody's eyes. There was some brother, some sister that, well-intentioned, love being black, love the community, but they really wasn't thinking about the power of their dollars. That might have opened their eyes. Who knows? I think it's too early, Drop, to say that it's a bust. Who knows what's going to come from this? I think we should take a wait and see approach and see what happens. We don't know what this means next week. We don't know what this means in 2 weeks. It could be significant or it could not be significant. Let me take it off the screen. That's not serving anybody's purpose at all there. So now I think it's too early to say that the Blackout Day was a bust. Number one, we don't have any numbers. It's a little too early for that. I will say they got nationwide attention. I mean, if you Google it, CNN, Blackout Day 2020 is today. Here's what you need to know. That was yesterday. CBS News, Blackout Day draws national attention to black spending power. Something called KCCI, Metro business owners say Blackout Day mentality needed beyond Tuesday. I agree. 15 hours ago, from another news source, Blackout Day 2020 seeks to boost support in black-owned businesses. Yahoo News, Blackout Day 2020 asks people to spend money at black-owned businesses or don't at all. WDRB, Blackout Day uses economic power to push for racial equity. Like I said, I mean, in terms of reaching people, they were successful. Like I went to their Facebook group, they got 1.5 million people in that group. The last time I checked in, it was like at, I don't know, something 100,000, something like that. I mean, what they end up doing with that group, we'll have to wait and see. But in terms of reaching people with that message, I got all kinds of my friends and family members was posting on Blackout Day. So in terms of the black community, the sheer fact that they're raising awareness about black spending power, maybe they're teaching people who were ignorant about it, not ignorant in a bad way, but just lack of knowledge. Or maybe they were reminding people who already knew and just wasn't thinking about it. I don't know, bro. I mean, for me, I think that's a win-win. I think there's some wins, some positives, if nothing else happens. But we got to stop looking to other people to save us and organize us. We have to do it. If Blackout Day is going to be successful, then we do it. Pick up on it wherever you live and do your own Blackout Day in your particular city or locale or state, rather than criticizing what you think they're going to do or not do. I ain't trying to criticize your Drop. I'm speaking in general, bro. Just not to you. All right. Just my thoughts on it. You know what I'm saying? If you think Blackout Day is not working, then get involved and help it work. Yeah, that's all I got to say. If you feel like it's not working, then get involved and help them work. But don't sit back and criticize them. That's just me. That's one way of looking at it. Lannis writes, Muhammad Ali is a legend just because what he done outside of the ring, 100%. I don't care. Really, I care less about what he did in the ring, other than when he beat up, who'd he beat up? And he was like, what's my name, fool? What was that guy's name? I know Dave would kill me because he wrote a book titled What's My Name, Fool, which is right here. It's right here. Look at that. What's My Name, Fool? That's my Dave Zirin collection right up there. I forget who he was talking about. Who was he talking about? Hold on 1 second here. What was the guy's name? Somebody help me out here. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank right now, but Vince writes, this is just the beginning of the blackout. Great to hear. Wish him the best. Alanis writes, it wasn't a bust. Everything has a start. Keep doing it right. I don't think it was a bust either, Alanis. This is the beginning. We'll see what happens next month. Again, I jumped in the group a little bit, and from what I read, I mean, these brothers and sisters, man, it's serious about what they're doing. So, again, I wish them the best and hope they're successful, and, that's it. That's it. When you get national attention, let you know to stay the course. They definitely got national attention. They reached all kinds of people with the blackout, all over the country. All over the country. I mean, you got a Facebook group with 1.5 million people. Maybe it might be 2 million now. Come on, you can't say that's not significant. Let's see, Rachel writes, retailers and CPG companies have always been aware of the dollars spent by every consumer type. Black spending power is just now being recognized by us again. It's been since the bus boycott, the last time we kept up with it. Like I said, I mean, the boycotters in Cincinnati, and their boycott was successful. They cost the city, and again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they cost the city some money. And when you start costing businesses money, when you start hitting businesses in the pocket, then now you get another ally, the business owners, because now you're costing them money. Now they're going to go to city council. Now they're going to go to the mayor. Now they're going to go to the governor and say, you know what, you got to do something about this. So organizing, organizing the way black people spend their money is a righteous endeavor. I don't see how anybody could have an issue with that. I don't really get it. Vince writes, the line is free. Fame is free. Hey, Fame, the line is free. You not calling in? Oh, he's free to call in if he likes. He's always free to call in, as are everyone who's listening. Where we at here? Yeah, I'm about to make that move, family. I really appreciate you for being here. I've got to get on with the rest of my day. I appreciate you being here this morning and sharing some time with me. I really do. Have an excellent rest of your day. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early. You never know who we'll be talking to. You never know who we'll be talking about. But just think about it for the rest of the day. I mean, should Ohio reissue the stay home order? Okay, weren't things better then? Is there any better way to stop the disease? Shout out to my guests, Charmaine Mcguffey and also Dave Zirin. Appreciate their time this morning. Have an excellent rest of your day. If you want to connect with me, shoot me a DM on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. I'm very highly accessible. And if you have any ideas for guests and show ideas, send them my way, and I will incorporate them into the show, okay? Have an excellent rest of your day, everybody, and we'll talk real soon. I'm Nathan Ive. Oh, see, we got a little, let me start right here. Hold. Just as I was rolling out. Oh, okay, this looks like a personal call. Yeah, it looks like a personal call right there. So I'll make this move here. 513-873-7134. I'll wait a little bit. Use that number if you want to call into the show this morning. And I'll certainly here to receive your phone call. Again, 513-873-7134. If you're just tuning in, the big update from yesterday is that there are now 7 counties in which there is a mandate to wear your mask. Hamilton County is at the top of the list, followed by Butler County. The sheriff in Butler County says he is not going to enforce it. I guess he's on some 45 Trump type ish. I don't understand the mentality, quite honestly. Now, you'll enforce all these goofy laws, these drug laws. You don't have a front license plate. Sheriff Jones has no problem with that. But something that's going to actually impact public health, you want to get in your feelings with it. I wish we had more law enforcement officials that would be consciously deciding not to enforce laws that would lead to the over interactions with and incarceration of black people. That would be nice. But no, Sheriff Jones up in Butler, he wants to get all in his feelings about wearing a mask during a pandemic. I'm going to tell you, folks, I'm not sure how many people listening in Butler County, y'all deserve a better sheriff up there. Y'all think that's funny? That's not real leadership. All the goofy laws on the book that's set in place just to harass people, you ain't got no problem with that, Sheriff Jones. But when the governor issues a mask order, mandatory mask order during a national pandemic, by the way, numbers are increasing. You want to talk about what you're not going to enforce. I'm telling you, y'all deserve better. Y'all deserve better. We talked with Charmaine Mcguffey. You'll have to make your own decisions about who you think should lead us and lead, shall I say, the Hamilton County Sheriffs. And leading us, being a leader in the community in that way. She is running against a man who killed an unarmed man, didn't really have to do so. That was the city manager's report back in the day. The city manager back in the 90s said that her opponent did not have to use deadly force. I mean, just think about this. If it were today, you got 2 armed police officers and they're dealing with an unarmed man. By today's standards, people would be in the streets. Back in the 90s, you could kill anybody you wanted to, apparently, and just get away with it because of racist systems, the good old boy network. Is that who you and then you flash forward to 2020, you want to be the Hamilton County Sheriff and you don't want to talk to black people about it. You have to make your own decisions. And also Dave Zirin, again, edgesports.com. You can check out his work there. That's my time. Have an excellent rest of your day. We'll catch up real soon. I'm Nathan Ivey, and I'm out.
This is Zoe Wesson. What side of history do you want to be on? The right side, or one where black people continue to be underrepresented in Hamilton County? Now's your chance to end 230 years of exclusion. In Charlie Winburn, we have a man that's received the Cincinnati NAACP President's Award, who fought on the Ohio Civil Rights Commission for 6 years, who received the Baptist Ministers Conference Community Service Award. Charlie Winburn has received the Southern Christian Leadership Conference Award and was honored by WDBZ The Buzz as Pastor of the Month. We know Charlie Winburn, and he knows us. He's the right man to put us on the right side of history. On Tuesday, November 3rd, vote for Charlie Winburn for Hamilton County Treasurer.
I am Charlie Winburn, and I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, November the 3rd, paid for by friends of Charlie Winburn.